For those of you joining in over on YouTube, getting ready to go live here on TikTok, um, got a few things to talk about as we wait for it to load. Uh, there we go. And now we're waiting for people to come into the room. Um, got a few things to talk about today. Donald Trump last night, Thursday night, was at an event where he received a Patriot of the Year award. I don't know what the criteria is for that, but when I think Patriot, I don't think Donald Trump. Um, and he's back on his anti-election bullshit. Wants to go to same-day elections, same-day vote counting, paper ballots, voter ID, citizenship paperwork, all sorts of stuff that's actually not necessary. And I don't think anything's actually going to come of it because the Constitution clearly says that the states have the right to conduct their own elections. So unless they pass an amendment, I don't see how the states will do that. Seeing a few familiar names out there, and our great moderator TJ's out there as well. Going to keep us safe from the MAGA influence. So yeah, we have a few things to talk about. Donald Trump at an awards banquet last night where he was given this Patriot of the Year award from Fox Nation. And he's the last person I think of when I think Patriot. But he was given this Patriot of the Year award and was talk back on his election bullshit. Want to do away with early voting, mail-in voting, wanting to have voter ID, which all of those things are up to the states per the Constitution, and they just don't have the votes to change the Constitution. But I figured for sure he'd be off talking about the elections and how they're run because he won. But he's still trying to go after the 2020 election because, he wants revenge. He doesn't think he should have lost. Do you think once Trump fails to do something, he will get exhausted? Probably. I mean, he's going to try to do some things, and then his party's going to push back. They don't have the margins needed to do some of the craziest shit. And the Republicans don't need him as much as he needs them. So I think he's going to get very irritated very quickly, and it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up trying to do something like anything really, not work, and then I don't know that he would resign, but he might resign only if it means that he gets a pardon from J.D. Vance. That might be something that happens, but he wants to do a lot of things. He says he wants to do a lot of things. His cabinet picks that some won't even get through say they want to do things, but they just don't have the votes or the power to do any of it, really. They're going to be lucky to keep the lights on and the government funded. Speaking of keeping the government funded, I cannot imagine Trump being president for 4 whole years. I don't either. I think something's going to happen to Donald Trump, whether he has a medical issue, whether they 25th Amendment him and remove him, whether they have to impeach and remove him. I think something happens. I don't think he's president all 4 years. Alex Stremo says he did now win. They illegitimate took it. I haven't seen anything that proves it, but Uh, I would love to see any evidence. TJ says I have my own hopes about this. Uh, did you grab Newman there, TJ? Okay. Uh, yeah, and TJ already dealt with them, but the couple MAGAs saying Democrats won't be in power for decades, very unlikely. More than likely, this Trump administration will lead to Democrats being in power for decades. Um, I just don't see anything good coming out of this administration. No, maybe everything if everything works the way we've been told it would, even though the experts in those fields say it's not going to work that way, and Donald Trump somehow pulls a miracle out of his ass, and it all comes up rainbows and unicorns, and this whole thing works, I'll admit I was wrong, and I will love every minute of it. But I just don't think that's going to happen. I really don't think that's going to happen. I think this is going to be some of the worst things that could potentially happen. They're going to be lucky to keep the lights on in the federal government for 2 years. Then Democrats are going to take control in the midterms. And then Donald Trump will get absolutely nothing done. And then a Democrat will be president in 2028. I think that's the only outcome that is going to probably happen. Donald Trump's not going to get his crazy stuff through. It's just not going to happen. Um, that Representative Andy Biggs of Arizona did a column for the Washington Examiner and was saying he thinks because government funding's too much and they need to get working on the Doge stuff and all of this because if we just do another continuing resolution, it's just going to kick the can down the road and we got to reel in that government spending. Yet their party added, $8 trillion to the debt during Trump's last administration. But anyway, or was it 8 trillion? Yeah, 8 trillion to the debt, I believe. But anyway, they want to reel in the government spending. So what's his bright idea? Let's shut the government down until Donald Trump takes over as president. That's his brilliant idea. Let's shut it all down. Forget the whole works. And that's a dumb idea. 5 days before Christmas, they wants to shut the government down. I mean, that's hundreds of thousands of people without a job, with no income going into Christmas, starting off the new year, potentially being furloughed. Some of the government employees would be considered essential, have to work for free. They'd be back paid on the backside of it, but still, they'd have to do their job not knowing for sure when the government would reopen and they would get a check. None of the government programs would go. Explain Biden taking classified records before he was president, not under the Presidential Records Act. Those classified documents were his copies, his notes and stuff from classified documents. They weren't the actual documents themselves, but they were things that he probably shouldn't have had from his 40 years in the Senate and some of his time as vice president, because he did have access to some classified records. Just like every member of Congress, based on whatever committees they're on, they have access to some classified information. He had notes for some things. Now, it could be argued that he should have probably known to, but he doesn't fall under the act. The Presidential Records Act has nothing to do with him keeping or holding on to classified documents. The Presidential Records Act says presidents cannot destroy any records from their presidency, and everything that is a presidential record is property of the U.S. government. Has nothing to do with being allowed. You know what? Yeah, you say he shouldn't have them. Well, that's why when he found out he still had his notes from those records, they turned them over. I believe you will turn a leaf when Trump gets in. No. I'm going to still be talking about how dumb Donald Trump is and how bad he is for the country. I think we know Donald Trump should have never been anywhere near the Republican nomination. Oh, that's what we're playing with today. Let's see if I get back on my Wi-Fi if that does any better. Come on. No, this thing's being so slow. Oh. Thanks, TJ. I was trying to get him. But the app is being very slow for me today for some reason. Uh, yeah. No, Andy. Thanks, TJ. Andy Biggs was saying he wants to shut the government down for over a month until Donald Trump becomes president. Would crash the economy. That alone could crash the economy by itself. Donald Trump's not even president yet, and they could break everything. The way they act and the way they're going, you'd think they won the election by, 100 seats in the House and they had 75 seats in the Senate or some bullshit. They're not that powerful. They're very, very weak. They're overplaying their hand. I don't know why my view count's so low. Yeah, this idea of shutting the government down for a month, you know, oh, TJ says, Eric, you're freezing my end. Okay, well, now it says I'm back online. That explains why I wasn't getting any notifications. I don't know what's up with this stupid thing. Let's see. Okay. TJ says to restart. I'm going to try that. I'm going to back out and come right back in. I have no idea why it's being dumb. It's not liking my Wi-Fi either. All right, we're going to try going live again, see if this goes any better. All right, we are back live. Still fucking with this stupid thing. There, now it found my router. All right, well, we're trying to get underway here again. Now, hopefully, it's better this time. Still saying unstable. I don't know. Hopefully, this works a little better. As I'm waiting for people to come in. Attempting this for 15 minutes, but not really any success here. TJ says it's still messed up. Okay. Okay, hold on. What am I holding on to, TJ? Is it actually starting to work a little bit now? Connected to my Wi-Fi, I don't know what's going on. All right, now we're getting some people in here. We're talking news, politics. Hopefully this thing still says freezing. Okay. I wonder why that is. This stupid thing. Seeing some familiar names out there. Is it any better out there, TJ? Or is it still bad? Elon Musk the cause of it? Okay, sure. Well, let's blame Elon. Let's blame Elon. That works. Speaking of Elon, that dumb piece of shit. One of the government departments that he wants to eliminate, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. That's the group that was created after the 2020 or 2010 is when it was created, after the 2008 housing crisis, to look into banks and credit card companies and all of that to make sure you're not being charged exorbitant fees, you're not being scammed, all that kind of stuff. He wants to get rid of that. No, we don't need that. Well, they just announced yesterday that they have a $1.8 billion settlement for people who were affected by CreditRepair.com and Lexington Law, two credit repair companies. The little bit I've read on it says basically they violated the law by charging people fees up front and then never actually fixing their credit. So they got $1.8 billion to send back to the, to consumers, basically. And they want to get rid of it. Pamela says, I think they're helping Putin to take over America. That could be one of their end goals, whether they realize it or not. But we need the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. I remember what it was like before the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau was a thing. You'd get a credit card offer in the mail, and you'd look at and almost all of them for me ended up in the garbage. But I would look them over to see if they were anything decent, and you'd get these offers, $250 credit line. By the time the monthly fee, the activation fee, and the yearly fee, and all the fees were done, that they charged you day one the minute you signed up, your $250 credit limit is now at $240 spent already, but now you got to pay that off on your first bill. So it doesn't actually help you any. And the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau helped eliminate a lot of that stuff. So it didn't happen like that. Weird. Popped up with a thing said overheated. I've never seen that. So yeah, they want to do away with the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, which helps people. Obviously, I don't think it's going to happen. That would take Congress. But then when you couple that with people like Andy Biggs saying, let's just shut the government down for a month until Donald Trump takes over. Marcia says, I'm hoping for the best from dumb Trump, but no miracle worker. Well, the best thing about Donald Trump is he's lazy and he's dumb. Freezing again. Well, hopefully it clears up. I don't know. I don't know what else to do. But Donald Trump is ineffective and he's lazy, and he doesn't know how government works for a lot of it. So there's going to be a lot of things he's going to say or attempt to do that is just outside of what he can do. And that's kind of the biggest thing. Pamela says, I have to go to work. I will follow you. Well, thank you for the follow. I'm going to throw it out there. I'll mention it again at the end of the live as well. But if you want to catch the entirety of this live, it will be up over on my YouTube channel, Analytical Iowan on YouTube. There's a link in my bio. And I post all my lives over there. So you'll be able to catch it all, including everything I'm saying during this freezing episode as to why it's going on. So that's just an option for people. Because I know not everybody can catch everything while, I'm live. But yeah, Donald Trump's not going to be able to do a lot of what he attempts to do because they don't have the margins in the House. They don't have the margin in the Senate. Marcia says, I'm subscribed on YouTube now. Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate it. I post everything up there, especially with that TikTok ban as of right now, looking like it is going into effect. Eugene says, freezing up a lot. Let me try to fix my internet connection again. See if that gets any better. Normally when I'm on Wi-Fi, it's much better. I don't know. I'm going to pause this real quick, and I will be right back. I'm going to pause real quick. I'm going to go reset my router. All right, I am back. I ended up resetting my router. Hopefully that fixes everything. As I'm hoping that I fixed the issues. So we'll see what happens here. Kind of killed the momentum I was starting to go on a little bit, but we'll see. Yeah. Don't know. I don't know. We'll see if comes back up and works better. All right, there goes my router. It is trying to connect, and I don't know. This thing's pissing me off. But we'll see if it improves from here. Yeah, they want to end up cutting. The Consumer Finance Protection Bureau was one of the places I was talking about. They also want to shut the government down for a month until Donald Trump becomes president. Entirely ridiculous. I don't know. I just don't think they have the votes to make a lot of this happen. Democrats are going to have to save the Republicans yet again. And hopefully it's now working better. So, yeah, Democrats are just going to have to be the bigger people here, even though the Republicans are in the majority. And they're going to have to be the ones driving everything, which means Democrats are going to be the ones to get what they want. They're going to be in control, probably going to keep spending about where it is, things like that. Yeah, this whole internet issue, whatever it being the way it is, kind of killed my momentum, but hopefully they start showcasing me a little bit and we get up and running again. But yeah, they want to shut the government down for a month. Think about how bad that would be if that actually happened, if they did and were able to shut the government down for a month. Hundreds of thousands of government employees with no paycheck right before Christmas. Of course, they do it now after the election because they wouldn't take the political fallout for it, because people forget. They have very bad short-term memory when it comes to politics and elections and things like that. People forgot how bad Donald Trump was during the pandemic 4 years later. They saw how he mismanaged the pandemic when it was going on in 2020, and they fired his ass. But then he runs again 4 years later, and people went, oh yeah, that wasn't so bad now, was it? They don't remember anything. They forgot. They forgot. So, if they shut the government down, it'd be borderline crashing the economy. And if they do that, Democrats need to start running ads. They need to start hounding that messaging home that this is what Republicans got, this is what they voted for. That's what people like myself need to keep harping on, is that this is all the Republicans' fault. Lay it at the feet of the Republicans and go from there. Video quality better out there, TJ? So far? Or am I still freezing? And then we got the potential of this TikTok ban. I haven't done a video on it yet. But the TikTok ban is set to go into effect in January. Was found to be constitutional by the D.C. Court of Appeals today, I believe it was. Now it's going to get appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, but obviously we got to wait and see how that all plays out. And it'll be on an emergency thing. Joe Biden can grant a 90-day extension before TikTok goes away. And in that 90 days, TikTok can and its parent company ByteDance can try to work out something with the incoming Trump administration uh, to end up not having to get sold because they said they're not selling off TikTok. And the big thing is like it passed with bipartisan support, but it was attached to three major overseas aid spending bills, which is why Republicans that wanted the ban pushed it through when they did. Um, all right. I'm going to try this one more time. I'm going to go back out and I'm going to restart one more time and see if we can get things going any better. I will be hopefully right back. 15 diamonds. Nice. Okay. Okay. Third time's hopefully the charm here. I don't know why we're having so many technical difficulties on my side. It's still saying I've got an unstable connection for some reason. My Wi-Fi is good. Uh, but I'm back in, back going live. Um, Talking news, politics. Uh, as people are joining in here, we've been talking about. This is my third attempt at going live. Been having a little bit of connection issues. Um, and we're talking about the news and politics and stuff, and about what actually probably will happen going forward. Um, is TikTok going to get banned? Probably not. And if it does, there'll just be a different social media network out there to pick up the pieces. That's kind of what happens. For those of you worried about where your favorite creator is going to go, look for them being anywhere else. I do post my stuff up over on YouTube. So you can always find me there. And I'm going to keep posting my stuff up over there. Waiting to see, kind of seeing who all chimes back in. Looking for some familiar names. But now, hopefully, my connection's better. I'm finally back in the green with a good connection. Talking news, politics. Don't know why I'm having so many issues tonight, but I hope those that were in my previous lives have come back around. We're talking about what could happen. You got Representative Andy Biggs from Arizona saying he wants to just let the government shut down for a full month, and how bad that would be on the economy. That would be devastating. They could crash the economy before they are ever in office. These Republicans are not out playing in the best interest of the American people. Democrats are going to have to use the thin margins of Republicans to drive the narrative, to drive everything, and end up forcing a few moderate Republicans into the middle and say, hey, we'll put our 215 votes behind it. You three or four, you want to back it, we'll get this through, we'll keep things going. You shut the government down for a month, that is going to be some of the worst things and the worst havoc you could commit onto our economy. So did they pass it to cut everything off? No, they have not voted one way or the other about shutting the government down. What I'm talking about is there was a column written by Representative Andy Biggs in the Washington Examiner where he basically said he thinks that since Donald Trump was elected and he will take office January 20th, that in order to shrink the government and to not keep the spending under control, that they should just shut the government down for a full month and not let it do a thing until Donald Trump becomes president, when they're in complete control and they can pass whatever they want. They don't have to work with Democrats. Problem is they can't agree with themselves, and they're going to probably need some Democrats to pass whatever they want to do anyway, which means Hakeem Jeffries and the Democrats in the House should end up really pushing this idea and say, hey, we want to keep the government open, find 3 or 4 sane Republicans that are more moderate, that are long-term members of Congress, and say, hey, let's get it going. Let's just keep the government open, keep it same spending levels. We'll vote for it and make it happen. Same thing in the Senate. Chuck Schumer, as Senate Minority Leader, should rally the Democratic senators and say, hey, we only need a few senators. Let's get on board. We all vote behind a spending bill if they keep everything where it is, and we can make it happen. Democrats have a lot of power when the margins are so thin. But to hear Republicans talk and the way they're talking about the things they want to do, you would think that they have unbeatable majorities in both houses and nothing could go wrong. Well, like in the House, they only have a 3-seat majority. 2 no votes is all they can afford before something fails. A third no vote, and whatever they're trying to pass out of the House is done and it fails. So it's just a thing where they're acting like they're way, way ahead. Not to mention they got 3 special elections coming up. And they're out here talking about all the stuff they want to do with Project 2025. You got Speaker of the House Mike Johnson saying he wants to cut us down from 426 or 428 government agencies all the way down to 99. And there's going to be special elections. Those clips should be running now in the districts where there's going to be special elections, and really hammering the point home. Democrats have a chance to do something that is very rare, and that would be flip the House mid-session. Is it unlikely? Sure. But could it happen? Anything could happen. I didn't think there was a chance Donald Trump would have won this election. I didn't think there was a chance Republicans had control of one, let alone both chambers of Congress. I thought for sure that it was looking like Democrats were going to have the House by 40 or 50 seats, and that they were going to probably gain a seat or 2 in the Senate. It was looking good. So, could it happen? Sure, anything could happen. I would love to see the Democrats end up regaining the House in the middle of this legislative session. Special elections in Florida are going red. They very well might, but special elections are weird. There's always a chance. 2,500 plus executive orders ready to roll out day one. I doubt it's that many, and I doubt it's all day one. And why are you asking if I'm okay, William? Because 25, if they really have that many executive orders, 2,500, that's a lot. It wouldn't surprise me if a bunch of them are things that they can't actually do with executive orders. Frank says, not in the districts these elections are going to be held. Oh, for the special elections? I mean, like I said, more than likely, you're right, that they're going to go red. But I never count out a special election. Because now you no longer have the incumbent. And some of that matters. Not to mention, if somebody like Andy Biggs gets his way and has the government shut down for a month, going into that special election, Republicans in control, um, of the House and the Senate say they do shut the government down. You're telling me that wouldn't potentially hurt them in these special elections? Very much could. I mean, a month of the government being shut down could crash the economy by itself. I haven't seen TJ back out there yet. I don't know if he gave up on. I was having a lot of connectivity issues. This is my third attempt at going live. I don't know if TJ's out there or not. But either way, uh, yeah, I don't think they're going to be able to shut the government down for a month. But the fact that they're even talking about it is kind of disturbing. Um, Fact of the matter is, Democrats are going to be the ones driving this, even from the minority, because if they do things like you're going to find out a lot of the government offices being shut down, no one's going to notice. You might not notice in your day-to-day life, but when you're talking hundreds of thousands of people not employed, not to mention everything that's connected to the government not turning, that has a potential to tank the economy. Just because certain departments aren't used by, a chunk of the population doesn't mean what they do isn't important or doesn't affect the economy. We have a uh, an intertwined economy where the government drives a big chunk of our economic spending. Some money going out, no money coming in from the people that are taking. It's going to cause the economy. Trying to figure out what you're meaning there. You talking about the government being shut down with, no government spending? Those jobs are all taxpayer funded. Yeah, a lot of the federal jobs are. I mean, all the federal jobs are taxpayer funded. But if they're not working and they're not getting paid, now they can't spend money in the economy. They can't pay their rent. They can't pay for groceries. They can't pay for anything. That takes a significant chunk of money out of the economy. It could crash the economy. Not to mention everything else that's connected to the economy. All of the government contracts, the government spending. If the money's not coming in, the factories that are making the products the government's buying the stuff from. Okay, done with Frank. It's not about whether they can find a private sector job. The idea is you have offices in the government that are necessary, that whether you think they're necessary or not, they won't be getting paid. And even if it was just about them, oh, well, they'll just find a new job. Why would they go look for a new job if the government could be open in a month and they know their job is safe? They'll have the job when they come back. It's just a matter of they would be furloughed or whatever, and a lot of times they get the back pay on the back end. The problem is it would kill the economy to have that many people not getting paid, plus all of the um, everything connected to the government not operating. But there's also some sections of the government that are deemed essential that would have to show up to work and then end up having to be basically working for free until they get paid on the other side of it whenever they reopen the government. Shutting the government down is a dumb idea, especially shutting it down for a month. That would be bad for Trump. It would be horrible for everybody, but yeah, it would be bad for Trump. And this is where the Democrats are going to have to come in, be the bigger people, and work with whatever moderate Republicans they can find and push things through on their end. I mean, Donald Trump and the Republicans shut the government down back in 2016 or 2017 or 2018 when Donald Trump was president the first time, when they had control of the House and the Senate. And they shut the government down over funding for Donald Trump's border wall. And the only reason they came to a deal and reopened the government without funding for the border wall was because it was starting to affect air traffic controllers. And it was threatening basically the entirety of American aviation and the American airlines and all that kind of stuff. Extended government shutdowns are bad for everybody. I haven't seen my moderator TJ back in yet, so probably won't have him the rest of the night. We'll see if he shows up. And I was talking about it before I had to restart my live because of connection issues. One of the departments that is on Elon Musk's hit list is the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. And they want to go after them. They want to get rid of them in its entirety. Okay. Well, what is the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau? It is a department of the government created in 2010 in response to the 2008 housing crisis. It regulates the banks. It regulates credit card companies. Yes, Trump is putting in bad people for Congress that have nothing to fall back on. So they'll do what Trump says. If they were going to do that, he would have already got Matt Gaetz in as Attorney General. Like, they wouldn't have pressured him to pick somebody else. He would have gotten Rick Scott as Senate Majority Leader. Instead, it's John Thune. They're already talking about pushing back and what they're going to have to do to block some of what he has to do. Republicans need Donald Trump needs the Republicans more than the Republicans need Donald Trump. He's not going to get just a free pass. Meanwhile, we need an electric banking norm. Credit cards cost over $100,000 per person. I don't know what you mean by that. What are they? How do you figure they talk? They cost over $100,000 per person, and what do you talk about with an electric banking norm? And if it involves more regulation, don't expect it to happen. And then credit and all banking cost each person over $100,000 in a lifetime. Well, that could be. That could be. Interest, penalties, fees, all sorts of stuff. Just need a national electronic banking replacing all credit cards. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Uh, Credit makes this country, well, it makes the credit card companies a lot of money. Ukraine has such a system, we are behind. Wouldn't be the first thing we're behind in. Almost every developed first world country has universal health care, but we don't. Um, we have our private insurance. I see Kate's back. Now that I restarted, hopefully my connection's better. Yeah, and we pay over $1,000 for every dollar of saline delivered. Yeah, our insurance and our healthcare costs are unbelievable. Unbelievable. Insurance love highest cost because it's only allowed a percentage. Yeah. Everything's controlled by insurance companies and they have their own deals and it's ridiculous. I've talked about it in several lives that you're most people now, some are now through the Affordable Care Act. Okay, that's great. But a lot of people are still connected to their insurance through their job and they're tied down. They're tied to their job because of their insurance. And that's ridiculous. I know people who refuse to leave a job because their insurance pays for medication they need or whatever the excuse is. And they're in a job they hate because they don't want to wait the 3 months, 6 months, however long the waiting period is for the next employer's insurance to start. I know a guy who's been without insurance for over a year and a half, and will finally now be eligible for insurance. It'll finally kick in January, and he had to take a better position with his company to even get the insurance at that point. It's ridiculous. Like, your insurance shouldn't be tied to your job because you get stuck where you're at. Yeah, been having issues with my connectivity. It's finally good now. I don't know why it came around. Meanwhile, we're doing it so bad that 40K in Germany is a higher standard of living than 70K in the United States. Are you talking about income or are you talking about people? Like, income. Social programs being social cost 40K is a higher standard of living. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of other countries that are doing things way better. Um, in the UK, you kick into effectively it's universal health care and a pension, a guaranteed pension. It's a national pension. I don't know all the details of it. I know about that much, but it's a better option than what we've got. And, the problem with America, one of the problems is we're almost always reactionary. We're never precautionary for a large extent. Look at Social Security and like food stamps, the FDIC, all those things. They all came about as part of Roosevelt's New Deal when he was elected in 1932 after the stock market crash in 1929 and during the middle of the Great Depression. we're in the middle of a depression, and then they're like, oh, maybe we should take care of people. Maybe we should make sure people have access to food. Maybe we should make sure that their money in a bank account is safe so that banks can't fail. They were reactionary. More recently, we have the housing market crash of 2008. Then they create the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, which is regulating banking, credit cards, etc. And you end up, we react to things. We don't look ahead and go, oh, maybe we should do this. If we were truly precautionary in looking ahead at how we would do things, we could have something like a universal health care going, hey, it'd be a big expenditure right now, but all these things down the road it would prevent. And it would be better as we look ahead. But they don't do that. They wait until shit hits the fan and then they react. And usually only one of the two parties reacts appropriately. The other party ends up making things worse. Was talking a little bit about the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. They were created in 2010 as a reaction to the housing crash of 2008. Well, they go after credit card companies and stuff and banks to make sure that you're not getting charged junk fees and bad fees and all sorts of stuff. Well, they announced yesterday that they have a $1.8 billion settlement waiting to start handing out money to people who were duped by Lexington Law and by CreditRepair.com. Two companies that were charging fees up front saying they were going to fix your credit. They never actually fixed your credit and then ended up, just collecting a whole bunch of money from you. Well, now they've come to an agreement with them, and you're at better money. They got $1.8 billion going back to U.S. consumers because these companies committed fraud. And that this Consumer Finance Protection Bureau is one of the groups that's on the chopping block, according to Elon Musk. Elon Musk wants to get rid of them completely. Why? Because they want to deregulate the banks. Let the banks go back to doing whatever they want. To hide the fees. To make it easier for banks to rack up fees and charge you fees upon fees. One of the things that the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau limits, for example, is before the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau, I remember because Obama was talking about this specifically, was when your bank account gets turned negative because of a fee from the bank, and then they charge you an overdraft fee because they caused you to go negative because of a fee. And then now if you didn't bring it up in time, then they charge you an additional fee and an additional fee. And, one fee from the bank can lead to a snowball of fees. Next thing you know, bank's making $200-300 off you and you haven't even brought your account back to current yet. That was just one example of things the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau has done that helps everyday people. Seeing some people chime in. We are coming into the room. We are talking news, politics, waiting for more people to jump in and chime in. The biggest thing for this upcoming Congress being they have such thin margins in the House and the Senate that they're not going to be able to do a whole lot, but they're acting like they can do whatever they want. And that's just not the case. Um, they're barely going to be able to get anything passed. You know, I'm guessing it's going to take Democrats keeping the government open, keeping the lights on, government funded. They don't have the votes to change the Constitution. Donald Trump was at an awards banquet last night where he got this Patriot of the Year award from Fox Nation, some BS award. Um, and he was back talking about what he wants to do with elections. And of course, he's back on the same day voting, only paper ballots, no voting machines, must have ID. I don't want to have a co host. Must have a voter ID, must have citizenship paperwork. Some of this paperwork doesn't even exist. Yet they would have to create it all. And he wants to do it away with mail-in ballots and absentee ballots and everything. Yet he himself voted absentee from the White House for himself. But he's got a problem with mail-in ballots and voting early and stuff. Now, he won't be able to do any of that because that would take a constitutional amendment. They don't have the votes in Congress to do a constitutional amendment because it takes 67% of both chambers of Congress. They don't have 67 senators, and it would be like 325 or so members of the House of Representatives. They don't have that many. They barely have a majority. They barely have 50% in Congress. It takes 218 to be in the majority in the House of Representatives, and they are sitting at 220. They are just over that number. Just over. They don't nearly have enough votes to change the Constitution, and the Constitution very clearly says that states, not the federal government, determines how each individual state runs its election. So they would need something to change the Constitution in order to tell states how they can run their elections. But Donald Trump's back on his issues with voting and mail-in voting and early voting and things because he's still trying to make up for the fact that he lost in 2020. He can't accept the fact that he lost in 2020, that, 81 million Americans showed up, voted, and said, "You're fired." Luckily for America, Donald Trump is ineligible to run again. They don't have the votes to change the Constitution. Some people say he might try to do something where he runs and tries to say, well, I didn't have 2 consecutive terms, so I get a second consecutive term. Well, the 22nd Amendment very clearly says no person shall be elected to the office of president more than twice. It doesn't say no person shall be elected more than twice consecutively. And by that point, Grover Cleveland had already been president twice in 2 non-consecutive terms. So they knew that was a possibility. If they wanted it to be consecutive, they would have put that in there and they would have said consecutive terms. But that's not what they wanted when they wrote the 22nd Amendment. They only wanted 2 terms. It was a direct response to FDR and having gotten elected 4 times. And they decided that, having a president elected 2 terms was a norm that they didn't like, that had been broken by FDR. And they decided to codify the norm by passing a constitutional amendment and making it so nobody else could get elected more than 2 times. Except for, obviously, vice presidents who fill out less than 2 years of their predecessor's term, and then they can get 2 terms up to a total of 10 years. Um, it's they're just not going to be able to do nearly what they want. And I was reading another article. Democrats have an opportunity here with the Senate confirmation process to confirm almost all of Donald Trump's cabinet picks. They're going to be able to block some of them, obviously, but they're going to have these hearings, and they can hammer over and over and over again about how he's picking billionaires and how these people aren't blue collar, how they're not everyday people, and all of it. They can do a lot of that when they're doing these confirmation hearings. And, you know, if Democrats play their cards right, they could have a lot of talking points going forward. The problem is, are they going to message correctly going forward? You know, Democrats never seem to message well. They have great plans, but they don't get the point across. Or they don't have a good candidate. Now, this year we had a great candidate with Kamala Harris. I thought she did amazing. But I'm looking at 2016 specifically, where they had Hillary Clinton. She was not a good candidate. I think the Democrats could have ran a ham sandwich and beat Donald Trump. But they ran Hillary Clinton. And you had Bernie Sanders, who could have ran, and Bernie Sanders probably would have beat Donald Trump. But I really think Democrats could have ran almost anybody else against Donald Trump and won. But the Democrats need to coalesce around a couple of candidates and decide who those couple candidates are going to be going into primary season into 2028. That way, you know, there's only 3, maybe 4 tops. Because remember what happened in 2016 for the Republicans? They had a big primary field, like 12 people, something like that. And they had like 12 people in that primary field. Well, the moderate, normal Republicans were spread so thin, all picking somebody that closely aligned to their value, and Donald Trump was consistently getting 30-35% of the vote in the primaries, and he was coming out way ahead. And you know, by the time they decided to start coalescing around one candidate, Donald Trump had a lot of momentum, and it was hard for they couldn't come back and catch him. And then they had to start kowtowing to Donald Trump. Donald Trump never should have been the nominee, but the Republicans screwed it up. Disgusted said Donald Trump hijacked the Republican Party. We all know that. Yeah, we do. I was just talking about it in reference to Democrats and 2028. How they need to not spread themselves so thin running such a major field, and, you know, because they could end up in the same boat. Now, most Democrats are better than almost every Republican, but still. Democrats push who can win, same as GOP. Kind of. The other problem with Democrats, though, is sometimes they can't get out of their own way. they were convinced that, and kind of forced Hillary on us, convinced she could beat Donald Trump. Now, argument could be, don't you think Bernie could have? Oh, Bernie, there's a good chance Bernie could have beat Donald Trump. The biggest problem with Bernie is it's the same. Because Bernie was an independent, Democrats did not support him. He could have won. Yeah, I guess saying maybe he might have been able to win. But one of the biggest problems that people had with Bernie, who weren't Democrats, it's the same problem that always seems to come up with Democrats. Is whenever they talk about doing anything, Bernie had all these great ideas: free college, and universal health care, and all of it, right? And his answer was typically would it would pay for itself. And he's probably right, but he would never answer how it was supposed to get paid for. They always seem to push this idea with Democrats of how are things supposed to get paid for when they want to do something big. But then Donald Trump says, I want to give $2 trillion in tax cuts to the rich. There's never a question about how do you pay for it. He did answer, but he needed the House to support him. Well, you're probably right, and you might know more about Bernie than I do. It just really felt like, I think his answers on how it was getting paid for got lost behind the rest of his message, and a lot of people had issues with that. At least some of the ones that I knew and was, around. But the point still is that when it comes to Democrats or people who lean left and liberal, when they want to do anything, the question always comes down to how is it getting paid for? Where's the money coming from? But when it comes to Republicans, very rarely do they ask how is it getting paid for, or they can spout off some nonsense and nobody pushes back as to how that isn't how it works. Democrats want their own party. Democrats don't support independence. Kind of. But that's both political parties. They support their own. However, Democrats were trying to support the independent candidate for Senate in Nebraska, and it was looking like he had a real good shot of winning that Senate seat as an independent. Oh, you're talking just for president? Well, yeah. The problem with it, an independent run for president is they would still have to caucus kind of with one side or the other. They'd have to, just to get something done. And in a way, I think Democrats and Republicans, they want their own party in just because they think it's easier to get their own, agenda through, broadly speaking. Yeah, in the Senate, I agree, but independent means you don't decide with one or the other. Kind of. But like in the Senate, Bernie Sanders is an independent. But he votes with the Democrats. When they count up Democratic seats in Congress as far as who's in the majority, they count Bernie with the Democrats. Therefore, you pick and choose and are bipartisan. To some extent, maybe. But a lot of times the independents, it's more that they don't think that their views align close enough with one party or the other. Joe Biden was bipartisan. I would say Joe Biden was actually a pretty good Democrat. The thing about Joe Biden being bipartisan is more that he was in the Senate forever and a day. He was in the Senate like 40 years. He made friends. He knew how politics worked. He knew how the horse trading went. He knew how to get deals done. So he would end up making deals. And some of these deals are ridiculous. Don't get me wrong. I remember one I read like 20 plus years ago because it stuck out because I thought it was dumb. There was a big bill of some kind that Iowa Senator Chuck Grassley, who's still in the damn Senate for some reason. Chuck, I'm older than chocolate chip cookies, Grassley. Ugh. Drives me nuts. Anyway, Chuck Grassley helped. He finally agreed to support this bill. It was a spending bill of some kind, but only if they put like hundreds of millions of dollars in to research why do hog confinements stink. Because some voters in his districts were complaining that they lived in small rural towns that were surrounded by hog confinements and the air always stunk. Well, gee, hog confinements have pigs. Pigs stink. Give me the money and give me all that money. I could write a 10-page paper on it. There you go. You know, it was literally that dumb. Now, maybe there was more nuance to it, and they were going to find a way to change, like, what could they do to offset the stink or something? But simple fact is, you're paying hundreds of millions of dollars to research why do hog confinements stink. It seemed like a waste of money to me. But he traded getting that big grant for this big research thing for his constituents to vote on for a different bill, you know, for somebody else. And then that other person will say, okay, well, you did that, you tacked this onto your bill and I'll vote for it. And that's how politics works. They're paying hundreds of millions of dollars from the government to research a snail in BFE. Very well could be. There's a lot of stuff like that going on. But that was what Joe Biden was good at. That's why one of the reasons why Joe Biden was picked to be Barack Obama's VP is because he knew how politics was played. He had friends on both sides of the aisle that he could work with to get things passed. It didn't always work, but it worked some, and they could at least get a few things done. But when our loudest representatives that have the most power get money from billionaires, that's wrong. Yeah, I'd probably agree. The problem with some of them, though, is some of the loudest, I don't think they're actually getting money from billionaires. They're just loud and dumb. Looking at people like Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. They're just loud and dumb, and typically wrong. I kind of have a theory that after this presidency, you are going to see, you know, multiple pieces of legislation and multiple, at least one or two constitutional amendments out, changing how some things work. to make sure somebody like Donald Trump doesn't get reelected. Project 2025 is coming? I don't think so. I think they're going to try to do some of it, but they don't have the votes to do most of it. They don't have the votes in Congress to do most of it. A big chunk of it is going to take constitutional amendments. And they don't have the votes. They don't have the state legislatures to pass amendments. Amendments take a long time. Even passing the they have the House, they have the entire Senate. They don't need a supermajority, they have SCOTUS. No. Most of what needs to go through the Senate will get blocked by the filibuster, unless they nuke the filibuster. So they would need a supermajority in the Senate to even get stuff voted on. They barely have control of the House by 3 seats. 3 no votes, and their stuff don't pass. 3. And that's if everybody shows up every single day to vote. The biggest thing Hakeem Jeffries can do as minority leader is just make sure every member of his caucus, every member of the Democrats is there every single vote. Because if all the Republicans aren't, their stuff's not going through. Project 2025 has been waiting years for this shit to happen, and it's ready now. They've been trying to do parts of Project 2025 going back to Reagan. They've never had the votes. We know he will, but the Supreme Court overruled everything. Even this Supreme Court won't do a lot of it. They have the votes now, though. They had the House, Senate, and presidency in 2016 to 2018 the first time around. With about the same margin in the Senate, actually a slightly slimmer margin in the Senate, and a bigger margin in the House, and they couldn't get anything done. They don't have the votes. They don't have the number of votes they need to do a lot. They don't have the number of votes to change the Constitution. Takes 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate. They don't have that. They barely have majorities. And then it takes 38 state legislatures to agree to pass those amendments. And with Trump in office, SCOTUS has an empty seat. Trump will put in him or her. Yeah, that is true. That was one of the things I was talking about going up to the election, is that control of the Supreme Court could be in play. There could have been as many as 4 vacancies. There still might be. John Roberts is 70. Nothing so far, nothing wrong with his health, but it's entirely possible that he resigns to put in a younger, more conservative person. You have Alito and Thomas. They both could end up resigning because of their health. Clarence Thomas should be impeached. He should. And if Democrats would have won this election like they should have, he would have been. AOC, I believe it was, has already introduced articles of impeachment against Thomas. But Mike Johnson is able to bury them, and they're never going to get voted on. Nothing will happen to impeach Thomas until at least midterms, or after the midterms, so early part of 2027. Now, there will be midterm votes. They don't have the votes to change the Constitution to prevent the midterms. Midterms are coming. Um, so that's going to happen. Midterms will happen. Uh, and then come midterms, I'm fully expecting Democrats to have control of Congress again. Because how bad Republicans are going to make these first 2 years of the second Trump administration, that the voters are going to want a switch in party leadership. They're going to want to put Democrats back in control. This is the last hurrah for the MAGA movement, and potentially the last hurrah for Republicans. No, I don't want to co-host. I don't know who you are. No. Republicans are going to be pushing it this time. Like they're going to. What do you mean, same old story? But no, Republicans, this is their last big thing. This MAGA movement's not going to be able to get much done. I didn't say gone, but they're going to be hurting after Donald Trump's out of office. Because there's nobody in their party who can grab the MAGA movement and the MAGA supporters, the MAGA base, like Donald Trump can. I don't see how they have anybody who can rile up that same group of people, which is a very dedicated section of the Republican base, that they will turn out and vote. Yeah. As for who the Democrats have, they got a pretty deep bench. Josh Shapiro out of Pennsylvania. They got Andy Beshear out of Kentucky, I think. You got Pete Buttigieg. Would be a good candidate. You got potentially running Kamala Harris again. There's only been one poll done so far, but she is currently sitting as the front runner for the Democrats. You got Gavin Newsom. You got Gretchen Whitmer out of Michigan. Potentially a Shapiro-Whitmer ticket could end up running, could end up securing the blue wall. Neil says, I think Newsom is the guy. Could be. Depends how the next 4 years go. Well, about 3. But like a Shapiro-Whitmer ticket would be great. You got J.B. Pritzker out of Illinois. Depending on what the governor of Illinois does between now and the end of Trump's term, he could make a name for himself. There's a lot of people in the Democratic Party. They have a pretty deep bench, as long as they don't get ahead of themselves. Barry says Newsom is a piece of shit. I live in Cali. I only know the little bits I see about him covered in the news. Obviously never met the guy. And maybe he is. I don't know. Neil says Newsom does need to moderate himself and get his name out there daily. Maybe. Democrats have options, though. Republicans don't. They don't have an option outside of Donald Trump, and he can't run again in 2028. Who in their party grabs the base? Who carries that same voting block without it? Anybody? Especially if they have to do something and make a change because Donald Trump is off the deep end, or his health declines and J.D. Vance has to step in and use the 25th Amendment and remove Donald Trump. It's possible. Not saying it's likely, but it's possible. You know, we worried about Joe Biden for 4 years. Was his health going to hold out? The questions are still going to be there for Donald Trump, and he's showing way more signs of having more health issues than Joe Biden did 4 years ago. Neil says that he lives in Cali, but he's most presidential and extremely bright. That's the takeaway I've gotten from Gavin Newsom. Something to be said, though. I mentioned it just a little bit ago. A Whitmer Shapiro ticket, taking the two governors from Pennsylvania and Michigan, could be a huge way to secure the old blue wall. You got, was it Roy Cooper out of North Carolina? Another one. You got Beshear out of Kentucky. Democrats have a deep bench. Neil says, good point, brother. I forgot about Shapiro. Yeah. Honestly, nothing against Tim Walz. I thought Tim Walz was a great pick. But I think it would have been interesting to see what would have happened with the Harris ticket if she would have picked Shapiro as her VP. Would have probably guaranteed Pennsylvania and could have potentially shored up the entire blue wall. But I thought Tim Walz was a safe pick that, didn't hurt anything. I would say more likely than not, the picking of Tim Walz probably didn't change anything in this election. Meister says, I just heard on MSNBC that Biden said today he plans on pardoning some of the people Trump going after. I hadn't heard that. I knew they were talking about it. They said it was very seriously being considered, talking about what they could do. Probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Thing about those pardons, though, is it's a double-edged sword, right? He gives him a pardon. That means Donald Trump can't go after him, sure. But part of accepting a pardon is admitting you did something wrong. And that would at least fuel the Trump uppers to go ahead and say, hey, clearly all these Democrats did something. And they would just live in this warped reality where the Biden crime family was covering up everything. But I'll have to look into that and see what's actually being said. Although I'm not really paying attention to the news, but I'm trying to avoid as much as possible the mainstream news networks. I'm avoiding CNN. I'm avoiding MSNBC as much as possible. Especially after Morning Joe went down to Mar-a-Lago and tried to make nice with Donald Trump. Fuck that shit. The way they covered this election was bullshit. And they did Democrats no favors with how they covered this election. At all. None. They could have covered it a lot worse, or a lot better, I mean, in general, and covered Donald Trump in a lot worse light. But they were looking over everything Joe Biden and then Kamala Harris did with a fine tooth comb and really shining a spotlight on it, but almost ignoring the daily gaffes and dumb stuff and the clear mental decline of Donald Trump. They could have covered him in a lot worse light. That would have actually still been true, but they fucked us over. They wanted their horse race. They wanted to keep it 50-50 because that's what gets you to tune in. Meister says, I agree with what you just said. They went to kiss the ring. Yeah, exactly. They go down to Mar-a-Lago to play nice. That way, when Donald Trump gets in and he picks his own head of the FCC and all this stuff, that they don't have to worry about having their licenses pulled and being investigated and, by his new attorney general. All this bullshit. Now, I don't entirely know, but from what I've read on articles about that, people who know a little more about Pam Bondi, Donald Trump's pick for attorney general, than I do, made it sound like they don't think she would be the type to do the revenge politics nearly as easily as, say, a Matt Gaetz. So I'm gonna have to look into that idea to see if what's being said about Donald Trump, about Joe Biden and the pardons for Donald Trump's enemies list. The simple fact that he even admitted to basically having one and was talking the entire campaign about using the presidency for nothing more than retribution should have had him, he should have lost based on that. The old pre-Donald Trump politics, he would have been done so many different times, the different things he does. And I don't know what it is about Donald Trump, but somehow he was able to get the Republican Party to ignore their norms and their values. All right. Um, okay. So, I've been going. Let's see. Neil says, do you think the Dems need to hone in on a candidate soon, like the next year? I've been saying I don't think they need to get one candidate, but they need to narrow it down to a field of like three or four at top. That way, they're not having such a diluted field, and they get a good candidate going forward. Trump is a unique creature that manages to manipulate people. It's not so much that he manipulates people. I've talked about it numerous times. But as far as the voting base, Donald Trump speaks at 5th, 6th grade level, somewhere in there. We find out about half of Americans read at a 6th grade level. So when he's talking to them in vocabulary they understand, that's part of how he was able to, get them so riled up as a political figure. He's not preaching to them as a educated person, right? I'm not jumping in another live. I don't know who you are. That's like the fourth live invite I've gotten in like 5 minutes to be a co-host. I don't know who those people are. But no, Donald Trump speaks at like a fifth or sixth grade level. I think that's a big chunk of it. And he's speaking at the level that a lot of people read at, which is sad. The fact that we have about half of this country reading at a sixth grade level is astounding. But because he's speaking at that level, he's not talking like a well-educated elite person. He's not talking like what you would think a typical rich person would. And by that, maybe not rich, but a higher society person. Think somebody like Dr. Fraser Crane from Frasier, played by the great Kelsey Grammer. That kind of character, that high educated, big vocabulary type person. And with Donald Trump speaking at a fifth or a sixth grade level, well, it makes it so that the everyday person understands what he's saying. Whether what he is saying makes a lick of sense or not, no idea. You know, I used to joke that I needed a map to follow out his train of thought to figure as he went from one topic to another. But he's still talking at a lower IQ level, so it resonates with people. I think that's one of the Democrats' problems, in that they have great candidates, but they don't reach the everyday person anymore. You know, they don't have an FDR quality, a Truman quality anymore. Even, you know, JFK quality. If Donald Trump never ran, we wouldn't be in the political mess we're in. No, we wouldn't. Well, I don't think Donald Trump ever intended to win back in 2016. I routinely say he fell ass backwards into the presidency in 2016. He was in a large field of Republicans in the primary, and before they could coalesce around a strong enough candidate to beat him in the primary, he started picking up steam, getting votes because the rest of the field was too diluted. And then between that, next thing you know, he's the nominee. And then what do the Democrats do? Well, Democrats don't get out of their own way enough, and they run Hillary Clinton. I don't know if a guy like Newsom can grab the everyday person unless they are invested in politics. Yeah. Depends on the message that Newsom would be running on. I think they need, whoever the Democrats run, almost, especially if Donald Trump obliterates the economy as bad as I think it, as some people are afraid it could be. Now, I don't know if it'll be that bad because they're dealing with such slim margins in Congress that I don't know if they're going to be able to even accomplish anything. But if he craters the economy, they're going to need to run on a New Deal style message. Some big fiscal savings plan for everybody. Something massive. But it's got to be something that appeals to the far left and blue collar Americans. Blue collar, in part because of FDR and the New Deal. They used to be the grassroots of the Democratic Party, and they have slowly been losing that voting bloc for a very long time. I listen to a lot of classic country. And one of the groups I still love is Alabama. And in the Song of the South, I think it's Song of the South, Alabama has a line was, Daddy was a veteran Southern Democrat. You got to get a rich man to vote like that. At one time, the veterans and the blue-collar workers were Democrat. Democrats need to do a better job of appealing to that voting bloc again. Um, so, all right. Well, I've been doing this. This is my third attempt at going live. When got impeached twice, the Republicans could have made it where he couldn't run anymore. Game over. Oh, I lay part of the blame right solely on the feet of Mitch McConnell. That motherfucking turtle. Jesus Christ. If Mitch McConnell would have had the balls to pull his party together and say, hey, you know what? Look what this guy did. If we don't do something, he's going to ruin our name and our legacy with him. Let's vote him out. Let's impeach him. Convict him. But they took the easy way out and said, well, he's no longer president, so we're going to give him a pass and let the justice system deal with it. Because they thought the Democrats would save him again. Well, Joe Biden gets into office, and then Joe Biden fucks up. I love Joe Biden, but at least once he fucked up. And that was picking Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland was the worst pick, for Attorney General. Merrick Garland sat on his hands for 2 years with the Trump investigation, didn't have it going on behind the scenes. We find out nothing was happening. It wasn't until a little over 2 years later, after the J6, or under 2 years later, I guess, just under, when the J6 committee releases all their findings and makes it public, and they put some pressure on Merrick Garland as he go, oh shit, maybe I should do something. Oh, I know, I'll appoint a special counsel. They can start the investigation. Start the investigation. 10 months later, Jack Smith had charges brought against Donald Trump. If they would have gone with that kind of speed from the get-go, here we thought there was an investigation going on behind the scenes the entire time, and that they were working with the J6 committee and sharing information back and forth. No, Merrick Garland was going, I don't want to look political, so I'm not going to do anything. If I would have been Joe Biden right after midterms and I found out Merrick Garland sat on his hands and wasn't doing a damn thing, I would have fired him. I would have fired him then. Put in somebody else who was going to work and, go after actual criminals. We saw what Donald Trump did on national TV. You had the classified documents case. It looked open and shut. But they were more, oh, please, Mr. Trump, please give them back. Please give them back. Didn't want to appear political. He sat on his hands and did nothing. Maestro says he definitely waited too long to start the investigations. Exactly. He waited too damn long. He sat on his hands, did nothing, because he didn't want to look political, because they were playing old school politics. They were going, well, maybe if we just ignore him, he'll go away. And that might have worked in the past. But no. And now you have some Republicans, and I'm hearing even some Democrats are saying, well, on top of pardoning Hunter Biden, Joe Biden should go ahead and pardon Donald Trump too for the good of the country. Fuck that shit. Why would they appear political? The next election was 4 long years. Insane. Because they were going after the guy Joe Biden just beat in an election. So they thought it would appear political. Because of the type of campaign Donald Trump ran and all the stuff Donald Trump did during the campaign, that if the minute Joe Biden went in, they started investigating him, that it would appear political. So they were just Republicans didn't impeach or they didn't convict and remove him back then because they wanted the Democrats and the DOJ to do something. And the Democrats and the DOJ said, yeah, we're not going to do anything because if we ignore him, he'll just stay down in Mar-a-Lago. You know, we beat him bad enough. He'll go away in disgrace. Well, how did that work out? They should have gone after him almost immediately. Day after Merrick Garland gets confirmed into his Attorney General position, he should have come out and said, okay, we all saw what happened on live TV with January 6th. I'm appointing a special counsel. Here you go. Start investigating. If he would have appointed Jack Smith then, you're talking December 2021, January, February 2022, somewhere in that neighborhood. Those indictments are coming out against Donald Trump. By now, the cases would have been wrapped, and Donald Trump would probably be a convicted felon federally and barred from holding office and serving a prison sentence. But no, we had to have the guy who sat on his hands and do nothing. People like Garland have caused a post-truth America. Yeah. They wanted to play politics by not playing politics and let things that we saw happen with our own eyes go unpunished. And once again, Democrats couldn't get out of their own way. Yeah, both sides, Republicans and Democrats, both waited for the other basically to deal with it. And then, I think part of it too is Democrats were hopeful that they were just going to win everything this time around because all the signs pointed that way. And then those investigations would have, gone to trial next year. And then they would have been absolved from waiting too long. And it would have all worked out in the end. Maestro says, as soon as Trump left office, should have started investigating him. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, Merrick Garland's first official job as head of the DOJ should have been appoint a special counsel to investigate Donald Trump. Democrats fumbled 2024 so hard, it's unbelievable. Oh, yeah. And I don't think you can put the blame on Kamala Harris. I think she did a great job with what she was given. But there's a lot of blame you can put on Democrats. First of all, when Joe Biden decided to run again 2 years ago, he was talked into it by Democrats. I heard Nancy Pelosi was involved in that discussion of, Joe, you just had a great midterm where, you lost the House by 5 seats when the Republicans were supposed to have the House by 50. They only have it by 5. And, we gained ground in the Senate. You just had great midterms. You just beat Donald Trump 2 years ago. You can do it again. You're doing a great job. You've gotten this, and this, all these achievements done. You're going strong. Run again. Okay? So he says, I'm staying in, I'm running. Then he gets around to the debate. He has a bad debate, and for 3 weeks they hammered him. You got to drop out. You got to drop out. Oh my God, the sky is falling. You got to drop out. Most Democrats didn't want him running again, and they didn't listen. You were one of them. Oh, okay. And that was your choice. I kind of agreed Joe Biden could beat Donald Trump. Up until the point when the Democrats drug him through the mud for 3 weeks, kept talking about him needing to drop out of the race. What they should have done, and what I thought they were originally going to do, the first part of after the midterms, was highlight Kamala Harris more, because people were going to be worried about Joe Biden's age and fitness and whether or not Joe Biden would live 4 years to finish out his term. So they should have highlighted Kamala Harris more. And if they would have been doing that all the way through the term, but you normally don't highlight the vice president, unfortunately. That is a forgotten position. But if they would have highlighted her more, then, yeah, maybe things would have been different in 2020, in this past election. When Joe Biden had to step out, Kamala Harris was the best choice at that time, with everything that was going on. Realistically, should Joe Biden have probably said in 2022 that no, he wasn't going to run? That might have been the best choice. But hindsight's also 2020. Because clearly what we did didn't work. The only candidate I thought Biden would have beat was Trump, and they assumed he would be the nominee. You're saying when Joe Biden said he was running for re-election? Yeah, because when Joe Biden said, okay, I'm going to run for re-election, Donald Trump had already announced that he was running for re-election. If Donald Trump had never ran a second time, Joe Biden would have stuck to his guns to being a one-term president. And they would have still had a primary like they already did, but I think Kamala Harris would have ran on her ticket from then. Now, I don't know if there would have been a field running against her in the primary, because typically, and both parties do this, when you have an incumbent president or vice president running for election, you don't primary them, typically. Why does the DNC keep railroading Democratic voters? Well, in 2016, they dropped the ball with Hillary. They really did. She was, I don't say this about many people, she was unelectable. Dems assumed Trump would be the nominee, and I thought gave him more credit than he deserved. Yeah, I didn't think he'd still be the nominee. I also didn't think that we'd find out around then that the investigations into Donald Trump hadn't even started yet. I thought they were well underway, and that, not long after the election in the midterms in 2022, he was going to be facing criminal charges like right away. Those cases would have already gone to trial, and I thought it would be done by now. But we find out Merrick Garland had sat on his hands, and cases hadn't even started. So, there was a lot of ways when things got fucked up and failed us along the way. Once again, Donald Trump fell ass backwards into the presidency a second time. But I think, maybe I'm being too hopeful here. I think after Donald Trump, you're going to see some laws changed. You're going to see a couple of constitutional amendments that are going to change the perception of, like, who can run for president, whether or not what the president can and can't do. I think after Donald Trump is done being president this time, you're going to see something like the No Kings Act, which would say no, presidents do not have and never did have immunity, pass, things like that. I think in that way, Donald Trump may become a consequential president in that there's going to be a lot of things passed as a result of him, not by him or because of him as a reason, like as the negative reason, not because he was the big influence onto it. But that could be hopeful thinking and, expecting Democrats to actually do something once they're back in power. We'll have to see. But I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Even though my counter on here isn't quite there, I have been doing this about 2 hours. I had 2 starts ahead of time where I was having connectivity issues. My router was being dumb. So I didn't get a great start, but then once I did, we've had a pretty good conversation. I thank everybody for being a part of it. Do want to remind you, if you want to catch the live in its entirety, if you weren't here the whole time, I do post all my lives up over on my YouTube page. I am Analytical Iowan on YouTube as well. I have a link in my bio. This will go up probably, at this point, it'll be sometime early tomorrow, I hope. And I recorded the whole thing, start to finish, including all the issues with my connection and everything. So you can catch all of that if you want to catch it over there. I appreciate everybody who jumped in. Appreciate all the comments and everything else. I want to thank you for joining me tonight, and I will catch you the next time I go live. All right. Just wrapped up the live over there. After I got past that initial glitch, whatever that was, things went pretty well. I thank you for sticking with me this time. Shout out to TJ, who put up with the first 2 attempts at least to get going. So, thank you for taking the time to join me. I will catch you the next time I go live, and hopefully I will not have nearly the issues as I did last time, or this time.